of work. And it's all around the world that this is happening. That came out of that process. And now, we've worked for a long time in Israel. We had staff in Israel, West Bank, and Jordan. And Eve was in charge of that staff. And she would go every 2 months there, back and forth. My wife Eve is Israeli, or was born in Israel. And we worked for a while, and then we stopped because we were building a big conference center. We stopped for not so good reasons. But at any rate, in the last few years, I've been very frustrated. And for me, frustration means I have expectations. Frustrations only arise because I expect something. And that falls in the realm of these truths. Expectations is like I expect something to happen. It's like I want some truth to happen. And because things don't go that way, you get frustrated. So I've been frustrated. So I am now going to take those 3 tenets, and I'm going to go sit on a hilltop in West Bank and try to clear out any thoughts and just sit and listen to the whole gestalt of that Middle East. It's a big gestalt. And see if some actions arise. I'll do what arises out of that. So that's my process. The question you raised, for me at least, is why even be involved with such a process? Why not just sit back and smoke a cigar and say, well, this is my opinion, you got your opinions, let's not do anything. So what's the driving force that doesn't allow me to do that and doesn't allow, is there a driving force inside of all of us, or are we the driving, we're all one. What's this driving force that makes us do what we do? So for me, the process is extremely important. The driving force, I don't think the driving force, I think when the driving force comes out of some truth, like I know that that something in the Quran is telling me to do something, is telling me to kill all these people. For me, if it's coming out of my fixation on something as the truth, or it's coming out of anger, I hate what's happening and I'm going to change it all. If it's coming out of those things, I think there'd be problems. In my opinion, there's problems. So what's the driving force other than that stuff that will allow you to enter a situation and be totally open to what's going on and to totally bear witness? I love you mentioned Ramakrishna. I did a lot of studies in Ramakrishna. When he becomes Hanuman, he became Hanuman. That's what we call bearing witness. It wasn't that he just talked about Hanuman. He became Hanuman, and he's jumping around, So the process for me has been very important. But you're asking a question which until this evening, I didn't think about. What's that driving force? And that's a very important question. But I will stop there because I don't know the answer. I don't have an opinion on it yet. I have an opinion, but I'm not ready to share my opinion. I talked a lot, Eve.
So let me just clarify for myself what's the question here. I think many people think that what galvanizes us to take action is that we have these very strong truths. No, this is what I think, they're doing it wrong, I have to do something. Or I think that nobody should be poor, and therefore I have to do something. Once I say, oh, but that's just an opinion. So what does that do as a driving force to taking action? But it's an opinion now. So an opinion doesn't sound like truth. An opinion doesn't carry that kind of passion, that kind of energy. So is the question then, so what, does that galvanize us? Does something else galvanize us into action?
Yeah. My first wife, mother of my children, who came from an Orthodox Jewish family, very Orthodox, and later became a Zen priest to the dismay of her family. But she was an extreme activist, and she was part of what was called the War Resistance League. So they had very strong opinion. I mean, I was of the same opinions that there shouldn't be a Vietnam War, and she was helping people to avoid being drafted. It was coming out of strong truths. It wasn't coming out of this kind of process. And the amount of anger among the people within the War Resistance League was huge. And frustrations. And it's part of what led us both into a spiritual life. That seeing I mean, we were, I was an activist, she was an activist, but seeing the activity that came out of believing in some truth and that came out of anger, seeing how those activities helped to destroy the activists themselves, led us into a spiritual path. I remember when we first started working in Israel, it was right after the collapse of the peace talks. I mean, there was a time when it looked 99% like there was going to be peace between Israel and Palestine. I mean, it was so close. And at that time, there were so many NGOs, activist groups, so many. And then it fell apart. Oh, what was it, about 2000, somewhere around there. I'm not good at dates. It fell apart. And most of those activist groups disappeared. And what struck me is that the ones that were left were ones that I think had a spiritual basis. They were doing the work because it had to be done. It wasn't coming out of their own anger or their own truth of the situation. They were doing the work because the work has to be done. And so you're asking, in a way, how do we tap into doing the things because that's what needs to be done? So my only answer is it seems to me a spiritual path. If you are truly truly involved in a spiritual path and seeing and experiencing things as they are, and being devoted to the planet, to the universe, being devoted to life, then you're going to do, of course. So I haven't given my little thing about the one body.
Can I say something? It just
Yeah.
occurred to me. Oh no, go ahead, go do your one body. I'm lost in my own thoughts.
Yeah, so those who have seen me here before, or somewhere before, have seen me do this, but I'm going to do it. Does this come off? Yeah. Because I need to stand up. Oh. We have in Zen there's a whole bunch of koans, things that you got to work on to try to to try to experience what life is about. There's a koan that says, "Get that old man up out of his seat."
Without a hand.
Without using hands or anything like that. Anyway, so here I am. I'm Bernie. Imagine that this hand thinks it's separate from Bernie. His hand calls itself Charlie, and this hand thinks it's separate from Bernie and calls itself Mary. Now, Charlie and Mary have been studying and have read things like, we're all interconnected, it's one body and stuff like that. And Charlie says, I get that, but still, I feel I'm separate from Bernie and I'm separate from Mary. We're three different things. And I heard that there's diversity and unity, so we're diverse, man, but we ain't one. We're just diverse. So now, something happens and Charlie's hand there's a gash in the hand and the blood is pouring out. And Mary looks at the hand and says, "You know what? I see Charlie's got terrible bleeding going on, but I haven't trained in the medical field. I don't know what to do. I'm not a nurse. In fact, I don't even have any medical supplies on me. I can't do anything. And I just got this new white dress that I'm wearing, and the blood, I'm sure, is going to make it all dirty and whatever. I better get out of here." So Mary runs away, and Charlie bleeds to death, and Bernie dies, and Mary dies. Bernie gets hungry. And there's food over here. And Mary says, I'm a social activist, and I want to get merit, and I'm going to take that food and feed Bernie. And I'll get a lot of merit, man. I'll be a new kind of whatever. But Charlie says, "Oh no, I want the merit. I'm also a social activist. I want to feed Bernie." So they both start fighting. Charlie and Mary fight over who's going to feed Bernie, who's going to get the merit, who's going to be the good social activist. And in the meantime, Bernie dies of starvation, and Charlie dies, and Mary dies. Okay. Then they wind up, they go to some ashram out in the Caribbean somewhere. And they get involved in different kind of practices, and they hear different words. And then something happens one day, somehow happens within a few days to both of them, that they experience the oneness. So now, Charlie doesn't talk about himself as, "I'm Charlie." He doesn't even say, "I'm part of Bernie." Bernie is this one thing. Bernie has not experienced the oneness of society or of the world, but Bernie has now experienced the oneness of Bernie. Those three entities are gone. It's just one entity. So now, if blood happens, gash comes out, there's no thinking in Bernie about shouldn't I do something. It's an automatic reaction that this hand or something is going to do something with whatever it has. It doesn't say, "I don't have enough stuff, I can't." It takes care. It takes care. If I get hungry, the hand that's closest to food picks it up and feeds it. So those are actions that have arisen out of the oneness of life. They haven't arisen out of anger, out of fear. So Mary running away, she was afraid that she would not know what to do with that bleeding arm.
And it doesn't arise out of opinions.
No.
They're just doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's the actions that come out of not knowing and bearing witness. that's the actions that arise out of a spiritual path. So in my opinion, I wouldn't say a spiritual path is a path which has a dogma that you can't refute. For me, that's a religion. Yeah, that would be a religion. I'm defining a spiritual path as a path which is leading you to the oneness of life, or the unity within diversity. But that's an opinion, that's just how I see things. And in my opinion, I like the actions that arise out of that. It doesn't mean that the actions that arise out of that you would think are good, or I would even think are good, if I had to label it. After the actions arise, we label. That's the brain thinking, and now we're going into knowing and into dualistic thinking. And we'll say, that was a good action, that was a bad action. That's got nothing to do with the process of how I'm looking at the actions arise. And if I can look at those actions, I see, those are actions that arose out of where you were at. Well, what's the actions that should happen now? That is, if we fixate on those particular actions and think that that's the correct or the incorrect, that can cause us to not be so free and able to act the next moment in a free way due to the new circumstances, which would take in the results of the old actions.
So let's say if we were doing evaluations, we could still do evaluation of a particular action.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, that was wrong, or I wouldn't say, that was better or that was worse. I would say, well, I see what led to that, and you did that, and it had this result, so let's do this and this.
Yeah, it's just I think a way of acting that has can be a way of acting without anger and also without fear. Interesting. I think it can be anyway. That's my thought, which all came out of this thing called Hanukkah.
So we only have...
Let's have some questions.
Some questions. We have about 13 minutes, but the mic is here. It's yours, and if you have questions, please come up and let's get involved in this.
I'm sure there's a different way of thinking for many of you. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Robin.
Hi.
So would I be correct in saying that it's your
I don't use the word correct. Share your opinion.
Is it your opinion that all is one and one is love, etc., etc.?
Yes.
Okay. So going back to how actions arise, how does one know or discern that their actions are for that love and for all that is one? Because after all, the people that are bombing left and right think they're doing the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. No, why don't you stand there for a second? Yeah. So I don't think you can know. See, I don't believe in knowing. I believe in opinions. So yes, I would say that the people that are bombing, in their opinion, they're doing such and such. In your opinion, it's not a good thing to do. So that would lead you to wanting to share opinions with them, all right? it would not lead you to wanting to kill them or to just be angry at them. That doesn't do anything. It should lead you to want to share opinions. And you may not be able to change their opinions, that's their opinions. But you're now acting out of love. And if you're acting out of love in the oneness, you can't say that there's a piece of that oneness that's bad and you got to cut it out. I mean, you could say that. But if you're acting out of love, you'll try to do something. What you can't do if you're acting out of love is ignore it. You can't just say, well, you can't ignore it. It's like if you're acting out of love, and it's even, I would go further, when Charlie was bleeding, if Mary is acting out of love, that's still not deep enough. If she's acting out of the oneness, she takes care. She cannot. If you're acting out of the oneness, there's no way not to take care. When you meet a homeless person in the street, if you're acting out of oneness, there's no way to turn your eyes around and try not to look. You say hello, you say how are you, because it's one. So that's even beyond love. It's a form of love. I would say maybe agape. It's it's the love of oneness, which makes the actions happen, in my opinion.